There comes a moment when stillness begins to hum. Not the stillness of sleep or silence, but something deeper. A pressure, an electric quality to the air around you. Something beneath your skin starts to awaken a current older than language, a warmth that doesn't come from the body, but from somewhere the body can barely contain. You've felt it, haven't you? That sensation that you're on the edge of something, that if you could just stop performing for one moment, stop proving and pleasing and pretending, something vast and true would rise to the surface. Carl Jung spent his life studying this phenomenon. He called it the numinosum, the sacred energy that emerges when consciousness finally meets the unconscious. And he warned us this meeting is neither gentle nor comfortable. It shakes the foundations of everything you think you are. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That sentence changes everything, because what you're about to discover isn't about becoming more attractive, more charismatic, or more influential. This is about something far more dangerous and far more real: spiritual magnetism. The kind that emerges not from technique or strategy, but from integration, from wholeness. And the path to this wholeness doesn't go around the darkness. It goes directly through it. Jung understood what most spiritual teachings miss. You cannot radiate what you refuse to integrate. Your magnetism, your true power, is trapped inside the fragments of yourself you've rejected, denied, and hidden away. The parts you were told were too much or not enough. The rage, the grief, the desire, the shame. This video will take you on an alchemical journey. Not the literal alchemy of turning lead into gold, but the psychological alchemy. Jung devoted his life to understanding the transformation of unconscious chaos into conscious wholeness. There are 3 stages to this process. First comes nigredo, the blackening, when everything false begins to burn away. Then albedo, the whitening, when the soul is purified and the opposites begin to unite. Finally, rubedo, the reddening, when spirit descends into flesh and you become fully embodied in your truth. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand magnetism, you'll embody it. Because here's what nobody tells you: everything you've been seeking has been waiting inside the parts of yourself you've been hiding. Let's start with the truth that's probably already burning inside you. You're exhausted. Not physically tired, though you might be that too. But exhausted in your soul. Exhausted from performing. From managing how people see you. From crafting the right words, the right face, the right energy for every room you enter. You've become an actor in your own life, and somewhere along the way, you forgot you were acting. This is the prison Jung spent decades helping people escape. Every false self you construct, the good child, the strong one, the successful professional, the understanding friend, is built from other people's expectations. Their needs become your architecture. Their approval becomes your oxygen. And one day, you wake up and realize you have no idea who you are underneath all of it. If you're feeling this right now, you're not broken. You're waking up. This is where the alchemical process begins. Nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution. In medieval alchemy, nigredo was the first and most crucial stage. The raw material, the prima materia, had to be burned, broken down, reduced to ash. Only then could transformation begin. The alchemists called this solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. You must be dissolved before you can be reformed. Psychologically, nigredo is the death of certainty. It's that feeling when your entire identity starts to crumble, when the meaning you've been living by suddenly feels hollow, when you question everything: your career, your relationships, your beliefs, your purpose. Most people panic here. They scramble to rebuild the old structure, to find new certainty, to escape the darkness as quickly as possible. But Jung understood something radical. This darkness isn't the problem. It's the initiation. The ego must die to imitation so the self can be born. Everything borrowed, inherited, or performed must burn away. This isn't depression, though it may feel like it. This is the sacred fire doing exactly what it's meant to do. You will lose things in this fire. You'll lose friends who only knew your mask. You'll lose the admiration of people who needed you to stay small. You may even lose your sense of meaning temporarily, because the meaning you had was given to you. Now it must be forged from your own depths. This is where Jung and Nietzsche shake hands across the centuries. When Nietzsche declared, "God is dead," he wasn't celebrating, he was diagnosing. He was naming the collapse of every inherited truth, every borrowed faith, every ready-made meaning. And in that terrifying void, he saw the possibility of something new, the Übermensch. Not a superhuman, but an authentically human being. Someone who creates their own values instead of inheriting them. Jung would nod in recognition. Both understood that real power comes from within, not from conforming to external structures. The work of Carl Jung, empath, and personal development always points toward this same truth. You cannot become whole by imitating someone else's wholeness. There's a specific moment in Negredo that changes everything. It's when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What have I been avoiding?" Because beneath every false self is a truth you were afraid to speak. Beneath every performance is a desire you were taught to suppress. Beneath every mask is a face that was rejected sometimes by others, sometimes by you. This is the raw matter of your soul. This is what must be heated in the philosopher's fire. The fire isn't literal, of course. It's the pressure of consciousness meeting unconsciousness. It's the tension of holding two truths at once, who you've been pretending to be and who you actually are. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding this fire. They numb it with work, distraction, addiction, or constant motion. They stay busy enough that the question never gets too loud. But if you're here reading these words, something in you has already decided. You're tired of running. You're ready to burn. And in that decision, something shifts. The fragmented psyche begins to gather its scattered energy. The divided self starts to sense its own potential for unity. This is where your magnetism is born, not in the light, but in the willingness to face the darkness. Not in perfection, but in the courage to be whole. After the burning comes the stillness. You've been through the fire of Negredo. The false selves have crumbled. The borrowed meanings have dissolved. And now you sit in the ashes raw and exposed and strangely quiet. This is albedo, the whitening, the purification. In alchemical imagery, this is when the blackened matter is washed clean. The soul, stripped of its false colors, lies pale and vulnerable and unguarded. Everything superficial has been burned away. What remains is essence. You might recognize this feeling. It's the vulnerability that comes after a breakdown, after a loss, after hitting bottom. It's the sensation of having nothing left to hide behind. No persona sophisticated enough to protect you. No story polished enough to impress anyone. And here's the paradox: this exposure is sacred. This nakedness is the beginning of real power. Because for the first time, you're not performing. You're just being. And that raw, unfiltered presence is more magnetic than any mask you could ever wear. This is where Eastern wisdom enters the conversation in the most beautiful way. While Western psychology, Jung, Nietzsche, Freud, focuses on integration transformation, and the hero's journey of becoming the Tao whispers something different. It says, return. Return to what you were before ambition, before striving, before the world taught you that you needed to be anything other than what you are. The Tao Te Ching puts it simply: the Tao does nothing, yet nothing is left undone. This is wu-wei effortless action, not laziness or passivity, but action that flows from alignment rather than force. Think of water. It doesn't push against the rock, it flows around it. It doesn't announce its power, it simply moves, and over time it shapes mountains. Water is soft, but nothing can stand against it indefinitely. This is what your energy becomes in albedo. You stop fighting yourself. You stop resisting what is. And in that surrender, not weakness, but wisdom, something remarkable happens. The fragmented parts of you begin to unite. Jung called this conjunctio the sacred marriage. It's the union of opposites that have been at war inside you for years, maybe for your whole life. Masculine and feminine, logic and intuition, strength and vulnerability, heaven and earth, light and shadow. Most people think integration means balance, a careful measured middle ground between extremes. But that's not what Jung meant. Integration isn't compromise, it's alchemy. It's holding the tension of opposites until they transform into something new. You can be both powerful and tender, both rational and mystical, both ambitious and at peace. These aren't contradictions. They're the fullness of being human. This is where the quiet magnetism begins to emerge. Not the loud charisma of performance, but the gravitational pull of coherence. When your energy is no longer scattered across 1,000 anxieties, proving yourself, protecting yourself, performing yourself, it becomes unified, focused, whole. People feel this. They can't always name it, but they feel it. They're drawn to you not because you're trying to attract them, but because there's no resistance in you. No hidden agenda, no manipulation, just presence. The mountain doesn't try to command the rivers. The rivers flow to it naturally because of its nature. The star doesn't strive to shine. Shining is what stars do when they're being exactly what they are. This is the magnetism of albedo. Not sought, but revealed. Not constructed, but uncovered. And it's preparing you for something even more powerful. Because albedo isn't the end, it's the threshold. You've been purified, yes. You've integrated the opposites, yes. But now comes the most dangerous and the most beautiful stage, the moment when spirit descends fully into flesh. When the divine stops being an idea and becomes incarnated in your ordinary human life. This is rubedo, the reddening, and this is where everything changes. The final stage of the alchemical work is the most dangerous because it cannot be undone. Rubedo, the reddening, the completion of the great work. In the laboratory, this was the moment the philosopher's stone was formed, the legendary substance that could transform base metals into gold, grant immortality, and heal any disease. But Jung understood what the medieval alchemists were really describing: the incarnation of the self. This is when the divine descends from concept into lived experience. When wholeness stops being something you work toward and becomes something you are. You begin to radiate something that disturbs people, not because of what you say, but because of what you are. Your energy carries both serenity and gravity, a silent authority that comes from inner coherence. You've stopped performing, stopped explaining, stopped defending. You simply exist, and that existence reorganizes the space around you. This is where the three great wisdom traditions converge into a single truth. Jung would call this individuation complete, the self fully realized in the human form. The divine center made flesh not as an abstract spiritual concept, but as lived embodied reality. Nietzsche would recognize this as amor fati, the love of fate. The capacity to say yes to life in its entirety, the pain, the absurdity, the tragedy, and the beauty, all of it. Not resignation, but radical acceptance. Not endurance, but embrace. and the Tao would simply call it being in harmony with the way. When you stop fighting existence, existence begins to move through you. Your actions become effortless because they flow from alignment rather than ego. 3 languages. 1 truth. When you become whole, you stop dividing your energy between who you are and who you think you should be. This is what makes Rubedo dangerous. It cannot be faked. Charisma can be learned. Performance can be perfected. But this kind of presence, this magnetic authenticity can only emerge from the alchemical work. From facing your shadow in Negrito, from integrating your opposites in Albedo, from allowing spirit to incarnate in Rubedo. Your magnetism is no longer charm, it's gravity. And like gravity, it affects everyone in your field. Your presence becomes a mirror. Not an aggressive mirror that attacks, but a clear, still mirror that simply reflects. When people are around you, they see themselves more clearly. The parts of themselves they've been hiding become visible. The lies they've been telling themselves become obvious. Some people are inspired by this. They feel permission to drop their own masks, to stop performing, to risk being real. Other people are threatened because your coherence highlights their fragmentation. Your peace disturbs their chaos. Your authenticity exposes their performance. This is why the awakened must remain humble. The work of Carl Jung, empath, and personal development teaches us that carrying light without arrogance is one of the hardest tasks. You must remain natural, as the Tao teaches, still capable of laughter, of washing dishes, of ordinary human moments, as if the divine were rinsing the bowl through your hands. Because spiritual magnetism isn't performance, it's presence. It's the radiance of someone who has stopped pretending. Let's talk about what this looks like practically, because integration isn't just theory, it's lived. You start making decisions differently. Instead of calculating what will make you look good or what will please others, you simply tune in to what's true. You ask your body, your gut, your deeper knowing, and you trust it. You relate to people differently. You stop managing their perception of you. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-performing. You let them see you, and if they don't like what they see, you let them walk away. You work differently. Your creativity stops coming from effort and starts flowing from alignment. You're not forcing inspiration, you're allowing it. You're not pushing against resistance. You're finding the path that opens naturally. This is the philosopher's stone in action. Not as magic, but as law. When you integrate fully, your entire relationship with reality shifts. Jung put it clearly. The goal of life is not to be good, but to become whole. Not perfect, not pure, not sanitized or safe, but whole, able to hold paradox, able to be strong and soft, logical and mystical, attached and free. The world calls this dangerous because it cannot be controlled. You're no longer motivated by reward or paralyzed by fear. You're no longer seeking belonging because you've found it within yourself. You're no longer chasing love because you've become it. And this creates a kind of freedom that most people never experience. The freedom to be exactly who you are without apology, without explanation, without the exhausting labor of managing everyone's opinions. This isn't the end of the path. It's the beginning of true life. Everything before this was preparation. Now you walk in the world as an integrated being, and that changes everything. At the end of the alchemical work, the soul grows silent. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of completion. You've burned in Negrito, bathed in Albedo, and bled into the red dawn of Rubedo. And now something extraordinary happens. You stop needing to announce yourself. Your magnetism becomes vibrational rather than verbal. It's not what you say that affects people, it's what you are. The field you generate simply by existing. The frequency you emit by being aligned. Silence becomes your language. Stillness becomes your influence. You no longer feel compelled to convert, convince, or prove anything. The truth you've become speaks for itself. This is the paradox that the greatest teachers understood. The more whole you become, the less you need to speak. Your presence does the work. Your energy transmits what words never could. There's a principle in physics that like attracts like. In magnetism, aligned particles create a field that draws similar alignments. This is happening to you now, but on a psychological and spiritual level. Your field naturally attracts what matches your frequency. Whatever belongs in your life stays. Whatever doesn't quietly dissolves. Not through drama or force, but through natural realignment. You stop holding on to relationships, jobs, or identities that no longer fit. And you stop chasing things that were never meant for you. This is Wu Wei at its finest. The sage does nothing yet. All things transform around them, not because they're manipulating or controlling, but because they've become a clear channel. Reality flows through them without distortion. Nietzsche would recognize this as the higher human creating values, not by preaching, but by being a living example of affirmation, of saying yes to existence, of demonstrating that it's possible to be fully human, flawed and finite, and still radiant. And Jung would smile, knowing this is what he meant all along. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. When you awaken to your wholeness, you stop dreaming about who you might become and start being who you already are beneath all the conditioning. This is the most radical act possible in a world that profits from your fragmentation, in a culture that sells you solutions to problems it created, in a system that needs you divided, anxious, and constantly seeking external validation. To become whole is an act of quiet revolution. You return to the world, but you're no longer who you were. Your energy has gravity now, not heaviness, but weight, substance, authority that comes from depth rather than performance. You attract not by wanting, but by being in tune with your own necessity. You respond to life from your center rather than from your wounds. You create from overflow rather than lack. This is what Nietzsche called the innocence of becoming, living without the burden of guilt, shame, or self-betrayal. It's what Jung called individuation, the full realization of your unique nature. It's what the Tao calls harmony with the way moving through life, like water, powerful and unstoppable, precisely because you're not resisting. Here's the secret that Jung never stated directly, that the Tao never named, and that Nietzsche only sang through the ecstasy of his madness. When you become whole, the universe reorganizes itself around your presence, not because you're special or chosen, but because wholeness creates coherence, and coherence creates gravity. You become a center, and centers naturally attract orbits. This is the dangerous magnetism this entire journey has been building toward. Dangerous, not because it harms, but because it cannot be controlled, cannot be manufactured, and cannot be faked. It only emerges from the alchemical fire, from the willingness to face your darkness in Negrito, from the courage to integrate your opposites in Albedo, from the commitment to embody your truth in Rubedo. The work of Carl Jung, empath, and personal development ultimately leads here to a presence so authentic that it catalyzes awakening in others simply by existing. You don't walk in the world anymore. The world walks through you. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, then you already know something has shifted in you. You can feel it. That hum beneath the stillness, that warmth that isn't from the body but from the soul, beginning to recognize itself. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. The three masters speak as one now. Become who you are. Nietzsche. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Laozi. When you merge these truths, something miraculous happens. You stop chasing enlightenment and start embodying it. You stop seeking purpose and start breathing it. You stop begging the universe to respond because you've become its pulse. Your magnetism was never something to gain. It was what remained when everything false burned away. You don't become magnetic by seeking light, but by ceasing to hide your darkness. You don't attract by demanding love, but by embodying wholeness. This is the alchemy of presence, to live so authentically that your very being becomes a catalyst for awakening in others. That is the secret. That is the stone. That is the most dangerous and the most sacred magnetism of all, and now it lives in you. If you felt this in your bones, share where you are in your alchemical journey. Are you in the fire of Negredo, the purification of Albedo, or embodying Rubedo? Drop a comment. Subscribe to continue this exploration into the depths of the psyche, and share this with someone ready to stop performing and start being. The great work continues, and you are the alchemist.